We are going to conclude the lecture by talking about how we can regroup educational media, and the way we can regroup them are listed here. We have visual, what we can see, then we have the audio, that is what we can hear, and we have example of the visual of the film strip. We have charts, we have pictures, we all know what pictures are, and then we have the audio. The audio, we have cassette, we have compact disc, we have the radio. We can only hear when it comes to audio, and audiovisual, we combine sound and visual. That's why what we can see and what we can hear, that's audiovisual. And then we have static media. Static media has to do with something that is not moving, something that stays where it is. And we have example of static media as charts, chalkboard, because they just stay somewhere, they don't move. Then semi-dynamic media, we have flow charts. At least you can still carry that to an extent. Posters, you can make it static, you can move it all around. So that's why it's called semi-dynamic, because you can move it all around. Can you see the message gives some sense of flow? That's what semi-dynamic media is. Then dynamic media has to do with when you have messages that just flows or passes away. You know, when you say something in the radio, you can't, except you can't play back what you say on the radio. Just like if you're anchoring a program on the radio, if someone on the other end is not recording or anything, you just say it and it goes like that. It's not like when you finish saying it, probably it's not recorded. When it's not recorded, there's no way you'll be able to get those messages back. So that's why it's dynamic, something that just passes away, that goes. When as you do it, it goes. As you do it, it goes. That's why it's called dynamic. So we've talked about how we can regroup the educational media: visuals, audio, audiovisual, static, semi-dynamic, and dynamic media. And the next thing we talk about are the functions of educational media. I want you to just sit back and try to visualize or try to think about what advantage educational media can give us. But before you start to do that, I'll give you and explain the functions we have in this your study material. We have number one, instruction. And when you use instructional or educational media for instruction, there are a lot of things, a lot of benefits it could give us. For example, we have description of facts. You know, when you want to explain something that is a fact, something that you can't dispute, that's the truth, you can use educational media to describe it. Just like you want to show me as I am. If you see me, you know that this is this person, it's not someone else. That's you're describing the fact. So it has to do with what something is or was. Then description of principle, that one has to do with why something is or was, will be. So you can use educational media to describe why something is, why something exists, why something is what it is. You can use educational media to describe that. And also you can use it for the description of process, that is, of how things are. If you take a look at all what we've said, we've talked about what, why, and how. Description of fact is what something is or was. Description of principle has to do with why, and description of process has to do with how. All these things you can use educational media to explain. And also the last one under instruction, we have explanation of development. That one has to do with how and why. and we have several educational media we can use to describe that. The first one is instruction, the second one is inspiration, and we can use educational media to motivate people to learn. When you want to encourage someone to learn, you can always get an inspiring video, maybe a video of someone that is lame and still can work on the computer, or someone that has his fingers or hands chopped off and can still work on the computer. Possibly you are trying to teach someone that the advantages of using the computer, and you want to look for a way to motivate the person, and you just bring a video of someone that has both hands chopped off and still typing on the computer. That person will probably be motivated to learn how to use computers. So you can use educational media to inspire students, to arouse their sense of drama or desire to learn, and also to enrich the curriculum. The next thing is for consolidation. In consolidation, you can use it to reinforce what you've taught before. You can teach something in class, and then for you to just know or understand that the students you're teaching have the full mastery of what you're teaching them, you can use educational media to, number one, recapitulate. In recapitulation, it has to do with you reinforcing some points or some things you've mentioned to them in class. Possibly you can send a video link to them after class and tell them, go and watch this video, go and see how it relates to what we taught in class. That's a way of consolidating what you've done in class. Then another thing that you can do during consolidation is test and evaluation. For you to understand, or for you to know whether students understand what you've taught them, you can always give them tests or assessment or assignments for you to know that. And you can use educational media. You can tell them to send in possibly an audio recording of something if you are trying to teach them a particular concept for you to know. So educational media allows us to do all those things. Number one is for instruction, functions of educational media. Number one is instruction. Number two is inspiration. And number three is consolidation. So the next subtopic is the role of our sense organs in educational process. If we look at all the sense organs we have taste, which the tongue handles. We have touch, which the skin handles. Then we have hearing, the ears handles that. Then smell, the nose handles that. Then eyes, then sight, the eyes handles that. If you look at the percentages of how we learn with all these organs, you see taste 1%, touch 1.5% or 1.5%, then smell 3.5%, hearing 11.5%, and sight 83.5%. You see that we learn a lot by seeing. So because sight is 83%, you understand that we learn a lot by seeing than any other type of the senses we have. And the way we learn is like this. Let us see the percentages of how we remember things. 10% of the things we hear we remember. 50% of the things we hear and see we remember, and 90% of what we hear or we see and do we remember. So you can say that for us to be able to learn very well, we must be able to hear, possibly also see and do. So because we remember things, well, 90% of what we hear, what we see and do, we remember. and look at this Chinese proverb. You can read it to yourself. That makes us understand that what we hear, what we see, and what we do is all what we can remember. So we move on to the next subtopic before we finish this lecture one. We'll talk about what media is to use, like how what is, if we want to choose a media to use in the classroom, what are the things we should take into consideration? The first thing we should take into consideration is the instructional task. What do we want to teach? What is the type of instruction that we want to teach? Is what we want to teach factual? Is what we want to teach a practical skill? You know, if you want to teach something practical, you can't bring a chart or a picture to the class. Though in a way it could still help, but if you want to look at an effective way of teaching a practical skill, it comes with probably a video. When you watch something, you can also do it. Then that will make you understand it better when you watch it. So you must know the kind of instruction you want to teach before you choose the media. Then you must know the learner characteristics too. You can't you must know the level of the learners, the characteristics of the learners, so that you'll be able to know the kind of media you're going to use for the students. You must know whether, if I use this kind of media, will the student understand? Will the age they have be able to handle whatever I'm going to give them in class? You can't give students that are in primary school probably some let's say we want to teach how to recite the national anthem in primary school. You must use a very simple media for that. You could bring a video to the class, and when you bring the video to the class, you see maybe a cartoon of someone reciting the national anthem. It will arouse the young learners for them to also learn how to recite the national anthem. But if you bring a cartoon to an adult class, everybody will be disinterested, possibly. So you must know the characteristics of the learners before you choose the media you're going to use. Then suitable instructional formats. You must be able to design and structure your teaching and your instructional process very well before you choose your media, whether it's individualized, whether it's group based, whether it's large group or small group. You must know all these things before you choose your media. And then instructional uses. What is under instructional uses? Can the medium enable you to arrange a more effective instructional environment which helps your learners to learn, which helps your pupils to learn more and better? So you must look at the environment, whether the students will not be distracted when you are trying to teach them with the media. So everything must just gel together when it comes to you using instructional media. You must also know whether the media you are using or the medium you are using is able to save time, whether there won't be a lot of resources that you would use in it, so that all these things will help you to just maximize your resources when it comes to you using media for you to teach. And then you have some other things like operating conditions. In operating conditions, we talk about the available resources and power, or the other special services such as special room, film show. Maybe you need a special room for you to record a particular video, like I'm having this recording in a class now, you could require a room that is padded so that you won't encounter noise. So you could need special condition or special place for you to do those things that you need to do when it comes to educational or teaching with media. Then limitation of media, you should also understand that media has its own limitation, and we shouldn't just use any form of media in our teaching. There are a lot of things that we can explain ourselves in class or tell them to go and look at probably in our environment, because there are some things that media will not fully teach the learner. So there are also some limitations of media. There are sometimes if you want to even download some things online, it won't be fast enough. Sometimes the screen won't be clear enough. So there are a lot of things that could affect the use of media. Media, like I said, have its own limitation. And areas of application of educational media, we have several areas in school. In all levels, we have different ways and different areas we can apply educational media, right from the primary school to secondary school and to tertiary levels. We have different places we can and different areas we can apply media, that is educational media. We have school for the gifted, we have higher education, we have commerce and industry, continuing education, armed forces, government services, and extension service. These are places or areas we can apply educational media. And before we finish this lecture, let us look at an overview of the sources of educational media. The sources. These are where we can get educational media. We have local production or commercial purpose. Local production has to do with what you do, especially for yourself. You can create something, improvise. Like if you want to teach a class, you could go to your backyard, maybe do a brick or do a carpentry work, or you want to teach them basic technology, and then you just do something. It could be something local that you did yourself. You could improvise. That could amount to local production. And commercial production, this is what maybe an industry or company does, something that will last for a very long time, or something that could be mass produced, given to a lot of schools to use, just like all this handbook or instructional or compared this handbook that we give to secondary school or to primary school. So this the local production, you are directing it to a specific need, whereas in commercial production we are giving it or using it in a large variety of use. So we've been able to talk about a lot of things in this chapter 1, and I'm sure you have a lot of questions about where we started. We started from resources. We tried to talk about the types of resources we have, or the category of resources, the physical aspect of resources, and also the human aspect of resources. And after talking about resources, we talked about the variety of educational communication media, the visual, the audio, and the audio-visual. After talking about that, we talked about instructional communication, about sending the message, the medium, and receiving, or the receiver. Then there is always a feedback. Then we also talk about educational media, the types of educational media we have. We talked about how we could regroup them into visual, audiovisual, audio, static media, semi-dynamic media, and dynamic media. And we also talk about the function of educational media, instruction, inspiration, and consolidation, and also the role of the senses. We talked about the eyes, the skin, the tongue, the nose, and so on. And we talked about what media to use, like what we need to do, or the choice, what our choice of media should depend on. We talked about instructional types, learner characteristics, and so on. And also areas of application of educational media. We talked about this area, and also the overview of the sources of educational media. That's why we talked about local production, commercial production. And that's it for this lecture one. If you have any question, I'll be so happy to hear them so that I'll be able to discuss it. And when you ask me questions, you'll be able to understand what we are trying to do the more. So I'll welcome your questions a lot. So you can send me a mail to ask your questions, and I'll be able to answer you so that you'll be able to understand T2 to pass very well. Thank you. Meet you next time. Yeah. Our DAO system, Joe.